Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This is Leadership, your intersection between growth and leadership. Guys, I've got a surprise. It's a surprise because this just came about. I think it was last week. My guest today, Danny Bauer. So he was actually my very first guest on my new podcast. This is Leadership.
Mm,
So it's really nice to connect with you again. And just to tell you a little bit of Daniel, guys. So Daniel Bauer is a principal development and retention expert. He's a best-selling author and host of the Better Leaders, Better Schools podcast, which is, by the way, sponsored by Harvard and one of the most downloaded podcasts in the world. Actually ranks in the top 0.5% of shows globally. That's unbelievable. And Danny, you are a best-selling author. And I just want to mention your books because I've bought both. I've read both. I got one upstairs and one's
yeah,
actually at the office because I'm still using Mastermind because I do masterminds with the school principals and the
right.
board. But
Yeah.
so, guys, if you don't have Danny's books, here they are. I'll link it up in the show notes. Just head on over to inspireleadership.ca in the podcast section, and I'll have that there so you can click it. So, book number one, Better Leaders, Better Schools, a roadmap, small ideas that lead to big impact. So that was the book
Yeah.
that came out a few years back. And of course, the most recent one, Mastermind, Unlocking Talent Within Every School Leader.
Yeah.
And Danny, you're at it again. So, and this is why
At
we're
it
here
again.
mainly. We're going to be talking. Danny, welcome to the podcast once again.
Hey, Joel. Thanks for having me. It's great. What episode are you on now? We didn't talk about which one this will be, and if you don't know, that's fine too. But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
So,
it's been a minute, and congratulations is really what I
well,
want to
thanks.
extend you. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it was my English is getting better. I'm getting more comfortable. I'm a Franco-Ontarian, so I'm a francophone. I'm French, and
Yeah.
I've had as you know, I've had the French podcast going for the
Right.
last 4 years,
Yeah.
Inspire Leadership podcast. And after hiring my coach, she really encouraged me and pushed me to go out, on the English side of podcast land, and just to make those connections, just more connections, and open up some doors. So,
Sure.
I'm actually, I think I'm around episode 20, and
Okay.
I publish episodes every 2 weeks. So it's
Right.
still fresh, but it's going well. I'm meeting some great people. Well, like yourself, this is the second time. Just with this podcast, as we've talked many times before, I was part of your mastermind group as well at one
Right.
time,
Yeah.
and so it's been going great. So I really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you, the congratulations. I'm really proud. I've worked
Should
hard. I
be.
planned it, had the
Yeah.
plan, and I have the energy and I have the willpower, and I just want to get out there and connect with people, beyond, of course, the francophone sphere of education and leadership. And
Mm.
so far, it's been a really wild ride. I've met some great people, and people that have been following on social media for a long time. And it's amazing, Danny, how you can just reach out to somebody that's got so many followers, for example, and you would think, they're never going to say yes to come on the podcast, but within a matter of a day, they'll respond and say, yeah, I'd love to. And you get to talk with them and meet with them. And it's great to be surrounded by great people like yourself.
Uh, hey, I think the same about you, and it's interesting because obviously I have a show too, and
Yeah.
like you'd mentioned, having the doors open and the conversations you get to have with people, and for me it was about learning, right, about stories of success and failure, taking action on one idea, doing your learning and your growth in public, and it changed my life, and I know it's changing yours. So yeah, congrats again. Thanks for having me over here.
That's great. So you're at it again, as I said. So you've got a couple books out, and
Yeah.
just recently, of course, I seen on social media the announcement that you got another one coming out,
Yeah.
and of course, I answered to that. I commented on that. I've ordered my book, so I'm anxiously waiting for it. And
Thank you.
that book is called Building Leadership Momentum.
Yeah.
Love the title. Love everything about the title. I'm all about leadership and development, and adding value to others. So, Danny, let's start there. Let's start talking about your new book that's coming out. Where did it
Okay.
come from, and how did you come about to wanting to put something out like that talks about building that leadership momentum, which is so important.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. So the idea, it came from, in it's sort of, I always try to teach through story and through sort of like multiple levels, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I want to preview one of those levels already, which is as a leader, think about how to repurpose great stuff you're already doing, right? And so that you're working smarter, not harder. We hear that all the time. What does that look like?
Mm.
Well, in my world, I support, to me, the world's most effective school leaders. That's who I love to work with. School leaders making an impact. They have a bias for action, right? Those are my people. And, they have fun. They don't take themselves too seriously. They're easily coachable, really hungry, even though they're at the top of their game and still want to grow. So I think, and I create many different types of resources to support these folks. And one of the things, I think you've joined some, and I know you've seen me post about it, but I've been doing these challenges online, which a lot of people end up doing. And I have paid for programs, right? I have things that I call relevant, responsive, and results oriented professional development. And those are paid for programs. Like you said, you were in the mastermind.
That's
We
right.
have a 10-week program that's project based called the Principal Success Path. I have live events, but I still have a passion, right? And a desire to serve as many school leaders as I can, what I call ruckus makers. So long story short, challenges are free. It's a free experience. But it's basically a free experience, like a paid experience, right? I put everything into these challenges, and I'll teach them live, right? They're not automated, and I go deep with people and work with them in the moment, give them practical tools, templates, so on and so forth. So one of these challenges last July I called it the Back to School Boot Camp.
Yes.
It was all about, right, creating that entry plan, making sure you're ready to go for the year. I think it was Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, who said something to the extent of, if you don't know what direction you're going in, then no wind is favorable, right? We're all headed somewhere. We're all going to land at some kind of destination. If you're not super intentional about where you're going, right? Well, you might just end up there, but you're not happy with what that is. So that was the content of the challenge. It was one of the more successful challenges that I've facilitated, and a few hundred people did it, which was super cool. But I'm just like, you know what? This content is good. The feedback I kept getting was like, why'd you join the challenge, or what was the most helpful part? I found that people actually just, they didn't have a way of approaching, like, it sounds crazy, but many principals didn't have a way to plan for the start of a school year. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
The pressure was there, the stress, the good things too, the vision, like, oh, what can we do? But they didn't have a succinct and focused way to get it all on just a few pages, to be able to communicate and start the year with some great momentum, right? Which is why that word's in the title. And so we gave them that very practical resource, and people really enjoyed it and turned it into a book. So that's the story there. My editor, though, she gave me some feedback. I told you I had a meeting with her today.
Yes.
And she said, you can't have building and create like with verb tenses. We need to make a choice. So I've been corrected by her. She's actually my co-author, I should say. Sorry, my co-author. And Ariel said, how about build leadership momentum? How to create a perfect principal entry plan. And so today we finalized the title, because you pre-ordered it, right? So it'll be ready. Yeah, it'll be ready sometime in May.
I did.
That's the goal.
And so I prefer building, because the way I see it is that, if I create something, then it might be something that's there and it keeps the same format. But when I think of, the start of a school year and planning that, you're absolutely correct. And the key thing that you said, Danny, in my experience as a school principal, I've been doing this for a long time now, and coaching school principals now as well, is that's what they don't have. They don't have the plan that's only a few pages long, that's like right to the point and very clear.
Very clear.
What I've seen in different districts or school boards is the board will have developed like this huge, 150 page principal guide to all the things that you need to do between September and June, right? And it's broken down for each month, which is fine. But what I found is that they'll feel very overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
like they'll go into this resource and they're not just going to see September, they're going to be seeing everything. And then before you know it, they just set it aside and end up using nothing to be able
Mm-hmm.
to really be focused on, this is how I want to, or this is how we want my team and I are beginning of the year to go. And this is how I need to plan it out. And so what I see often, I'll say often, what I see are principals that just start the year the same way that they always do. They try to build momentum the same way that they do, and they do end up building momentum, but it's like the 51st Dates, the movie. That
Yeah.
momentum is built all the time at during the same period of a school
Yeah.
year, and then
Yeah.
when it lets off and they lose the momentum, it's always at the same time of year. So
Yeah.
it's like 51st Dates, and you just keep repeating it, and then they'll get
Keep repeating.
discouraged.
Yep.
And within that, Danny, because it's not planned out, the other big piece for me that I try to work on with school leaders
Mm.
is the fact that when you don't plan it out, you're not putting in time for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then
Mm-hmm.
they'll start saying stuff like, I don't have time for professional development. I can't come to the mastermind this week. And then before they know it, they've missed 3 sessions and whatnot. So because it's not planned
Mm.
in, right? And we all know that if we don't put it in our calendar, right, something else is going to take up that spot.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what you're illustrated too. I mean, without a plan. So in the absence of a plan, in that void, right? Stuff's gonna fill it in. And that's the definition of being a reactive leader versus being intentional, having the plan and
Yeah.
having the goal, right? You're proactive. You're saying I'm telling you, right? I'm telling you in the world, like this is how we're gonna do it. At least in American football, but I'm sure like world football, or some people might call it soccer. I'm not 100% sure, but in American football, they script out like the first, I don't know, 10, 20 plays or something like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
in a perfect ideal game scenario, this is how we plan on at least getting that first few points on the board. And they have a plan, right? And from there they make adjustments, so that we're just trying to do the same thing with school leaders here. And the way the book is set up, and the way the challenge was too, there's different buckets. There's 5 buckets that I coach ruckus makers and school leaders to implement.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, you highlighted when leaders don't have time for themselves. That's the first bucket, right? Is getting you right, and making sure that the things that you need to be successful and sustain yourself, right? Because people get tired or burnt out, or end up quitting and leaving the profession. Well, the job's hard.
It
It's
is.
really hard. But the leaders that experience it a little less hard are usually the ones that are more proactive, have the plan, and have those systems
You're
set
right.
up, right?
Yep.
To take care of themselves.
And that's what you hope to be able to reproduce, within those that don't have that element, or that element is missing, and you see them struggling, and it's
Yeah,
tough to see them struggling, right? So you try to
right.
coach them, and you try to show them, or to point them in the right direction, or to ask the right questions to make them realize that, come by the mastermind, it'd be good for you, or let's sit down and let's look at how you're using your time just during the week. Let's do some time tracking or stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it's tough to see them, not, especially not taking care of themselves. And you're absolutely right. The ones that do have those systems in, or that kind of plan in, are the ones that are able to find time to laugh. The ones that always seem to come into whatever meeting that we're having, be it the mastermind or even a board level meeting, and they always seem to
Mhm.
show up with their glass half full, not half empty,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or they're solution oriented. So
Oh, big
I th-
time.
I th- I think, Danny, what you're providing us with this book is indispensable, because it doesn't only have an impact on our productivity and us being really goal oriented and knowing exactly where we're going and what we want to do, but it's got a profound impact on our mindset as well.
Yeah, mindset and joy, satisfaction, engagement in your work, but outside of work, right? Like you said, and not even half full. I want people's cups to be overflowing, really, in operating out of a space and place of abundance. And so when it comes to you, can I share like an
Yep.
idea? You'll get
Yep.
it in the book, but at least we could go somewhat deep on this topic.
Sure.
Uh, I teach something called the Ruckus Maker Mindset Tool. Um, and this tool evolves, right? So my
Yep.
thinking around it has changed a little bit
I've
as
used
it's
it.
create. Oh, you've used it.
I've used it.
Oh,
Absolutely. I've used it
so
just this year, actually.
fantastic. Well, all right. Can I turn the microphone back on you? Is that
No, no,
appropriate?
go keep going. I didn't want to
Uh,
interrupt you, but I just had to say it that yeah, we
all
did
right.
use it. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
am
Sorry.
curious. I'm curious how that experience was. But yeah, the way I teach it, it's a simple tool. And to me, I tell leaders, listen, you don't need the rocket science level, PhD level sort of understanding of things. And it's really interesting, sometimes leaders are like looking for the secrets or the hacks or the formulas for success. We already know it. It's easy. You just need to do it, right? And it does start with you. So the fundamentals are eating, sleeping, moving,
Yep.
meditating, and unplugging, right? And that's at least how I have it so far. We know, I mean, you need 8 hours of sleep, right? Around there, consistently, to be at your best energetically and that kind of thing. Eating high quality foods, which can be very difficult, by the way, where I live in America.
That's hard here too.
Yeah,
We've got
okay.
poutine, so
Yeah, got it. So eating, sleeping, moving, just getting movement around, that could be I know you post a lot about fitness yourself. And so
yeah,
I'm training for a half marathon.
nice.
Resistance training and lifting weights is really important, especially as we age. You know what I mean? And to be independent, but it also like your nervous system and physical, like it's all connected. It helps keep your mind sharp too. You know what I mean? So it's not, you could do
Absolutely.
it for the looks and for that side of things, but it's really for just longevity, you know what I mean, and vitality. So that's the moving around stuff. But even walking is the most underrated workout, honestly, in the world. Um, Unplugging is, listen, take the email off your phone.
That's a
I
big one.
like to challenge leaders to have, if they need social media on their phone, to have one app instead of all the apps. Uh, Having some real boundaries, around when you're going to connect to email and that kind of stuff and work, and have times that you're totally unplugged, right? So that's what I mean there. Less screen time, this kind of stuff. And meditation, that's just something I'm really into. And I don't know if you know this, Joel, but I just started this month, actually, a 2-year journey where I'm going to be, at the end of the 2 years, a certified meditation and mindfulness
Wow,
teacher.
congratulations. That's
Yeah, yeah.
great. That's great.
So it started off as a hobby, if
Yeah.
I'm if
Yeah.
I'm honest. And back in 2016, we read a book called Search Inside Yourself, which was a very scientific approach to meditation and talked about
Yeah.
the
I've read it.
benefits.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Uh, and my interest just got deeper, 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 to where I take a course called The Power of Awareness, because it's a prereq for this 2-year program.
Okay.
And I also had to do a 7-day silent meditation retreat, which was just absolutely awesome. But it's just something that I know, will serve school leaders, help them recalibrate and maybe reboot their personal operating system. And that's why it's part of that Ruckus Maker mindset tool, because what I've found, when you meditate, you do become more proactive, less reactive. You're able to note when things happen at that board meeting, like you said, and the stakes are high, and maybe as a community member, just like really going to town on you. And, it doesn't sting any less, but you notice that it stings.
Yeah.
And that doesn't cause you to do something that you might regret. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so meditations help that way, and help me just like really sit in the big picture of stuff. You know, is this thing I'm so worried about going to matter in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years from now? And yeah, it's all about perspective and just investigating experience. So that's the Ruckus Maker mindset tool. We talk about it in depth in the book. And as you know, um, part of it is like figuring out where you're at currently, the quality of your sleep right now, and then where do you want to be in 90 days, right?
Yeah.
And so then in
Exactly.
your principal entry plan, let's just make some tiny steps, right, to improve all those areas. So I said the tool will evolve. So the last thing I'll say with it, I was listening to a podcast recently, and this guy was just talking about the importance of light, being outside, that kind of thing. So who knows? I might add that as well. And he talked about your social networks too, which the tool right now, at least in its current format, ignores. But I think those are important parts. So I don't know if I'll add it or not, but just getting more sunlight, and light exposure, and then really nurturing those relationships, right? Because yeah, being alone is not great.
No, and it's for me, it's all about leveraging these tools, right? So,
Mm,
we just talked about that one, and you see, here's the thing. This is the way I see it, Danny. When it comes to these tools and how powerful they can be, it's a timing. Education is a very predictable area of work, right? We can,
yeah,
in terms of when people are going to be stressed, or the stressful times, that
sure.
we can predict. I can predict in 3 years from now exactly pretty much when teachers are going to be stressed throughout the school year. You can
Yeah,
predict these things. So now, can you imagine having these kinds of tools at your disposal as a leader, and deciding, okay, well, here's a tool I'm going to use, but when am I going to use it? When am I going to follow up? When
right.
is a great time? Because I know that these are coming, and what I want from my staff, or for the people that work in the same building, is I want them, and you mentioned it, I want them to be aware that they will be stressed. So if you know
Mm,
it's coming, then that means that you should be able to put things into place before, be it meditation, be it time blocking, whatever it is. It could be the mindset tool.
mm-hmm.
Let's put these things into place, because we know that you're going to get to this point where you're going to be tired, short of patience. You might be end up taking some sick days, because you're not your mental health isn't there. How can we avoid these things? And I think that these tools, leveraging it with the fact that we know when people are going to be stressed out, can be a very, very powerful ally to a leader.
Very powerful, right? And that's just one of the tools in the book. There's many more. I don't know if you'd like to hear about the other buckets.
Well, I've got
But
them in
yeah.
front of me here. You got 7 buckets, right?
Oh, uh, you got me from you. That's awesome. I have
Yeah,
five. I have five.
you got 5.
You communications, right? Your academics, culture, and
Okay,
operations.
okay, and
So
okay. So this number 7 I'm looking at is the one that you bring it all together. So, but listen, I'm I'm
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm saying these things and I'm gesturing. So for those of you looking at this on YouTube, well, you can see me gesturing, and for those of you that are listening, for everybody, I'll link up. Because there's a link. You go to your website,
Yeah.
DannyBetterLeadersBetterSchools.com. The info is there, so you can pre-order the book. I'll link that up in the show notes, of course, so that people can get their hands on this book. But yeah, if you want to talk about another part of the book coming up, that'd be great.
Yeah. So no, I just want to, definitely like plant a seed in your listener or viewer's mind, right? Like what
Absolutely.
are those buckets? So let's start with you. And really that's how I roll with every program that I build, because what I know is school leaders are so good at serving others, they
Mm,
forget about themselves, right?
yeah.
So every program's pretty intentional about what do you need again to sustain and be effective to keep your battery charged, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other buckets have to do with your communication with your staff, with your community, all the stakeholders, that kind of thing. Academics, which is obviously the business of school and what people really care about at the end of the day. Culture, which everything flows out of, right? If you
Absolutely.
want to know if your culture is any good, just look at the quality of the relationships, right, among adults in the building. And then there's operations. So one more activity that I could give your listener and viewer has to do with culture. And so one of the things that I like to do, actually you participated in a sort of experiment on Facebook, put in a picture up that is somewhat
Yes.
abstract and
Yeah.
creative,
Yeah.
and essentially like caption this or tell me what you see here, right? And that just gets people in a creative zone and that kind of thing. Now the activity for culture isn't caption this. What I want a school leader to do is find 10 sort of random pictures, and what you're looking for are pictures that will evoke strong emotion, right?
Okay.
So maybe you pick a student, and maybe it's one of your hardest
Mm,
students,
mm,
right? Or maybe
yeah.
it's one of the most successful. I don't know. Maybe you pick a puppy. Maybe you pick an older person, right? Maybe you pick a beautiful scene nature or space or a traffic jam. So just try to find a variety of pictures that will evoke strong emotion. And then what I want you to do is bring it to your staff, right? Have them look at the pictures, have them make meaning and tell stories around the pictures, and challenge them to pick the top 3 pictures that best represent the quality of the school culture, right?
Hmm.
And because it's visual, right? And because people will imprint their stories and make meaning from what they see, talk about the rich data that you'll collect from your staff when they're telling you the story of how this represents your culture, right?
That's cool.
You're hearing that reasoning, and then if you hear some stuff that's sort of like an alarm or an alert, great. Now you're again more proactive, and you can start building that momentum that we want to see, and making adjustments that you want to make in your culture as well. You know, a robust discussion around, okay, cool. Well, what's the kind of culture that we want to build now that we've established what it already is in existence? And maybe you challenge your staff, go find some pictures that represent that and come back and tell us, right? So, you know, that's a practical tool, and that's an activity that you could do at a PD day with your staff. And I think you'd learn a lot. I know you would.
I think it'd be great because when we talk about culture and the values within that culture, it's important for us to all be on the same page. So,
Yeah.
what better way to not only identify those values, which are words, than to
Right.
find actually a few pictures where, like you said, it will stay imprinted in people's minds. And what a great way to make sure that we're all staying at the same level, not the same level, but on the same page of what
Mm,
that value means to us, because we'll automatically refer in our minds to that picture. And it's a way that keeps us connected to that same picture, which is the same meaning. So I think it's
mm.
really great. And we might have, it's been a few years since I was in the mastermind, Danny, but you might have actually done an exercise similar to that with the mastermind group at one point. Like you were explaining it, and it seemed familiar to me, but it
I
is
might have.
yeah, you probably did.
Yeah.
But it's a great activity to do with your staff for sure, or your leadership team, or whatever position you're at. If you're a teacher, with your students, even when
Yeah,
we're talking about
definitely.
class culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can do that with
Yeah.
them as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So there's one thing that I found really interesting, and I'm gonna read it off. I'm on your website here, the
Okay.
page where you can pre-order Building Leadership Momentum, guys. It will be linked so you can get your hands on this book. Just head on over to inspireleadership.ca in the podcast section. It will be there. But right off the bat, the title, "Hope is not a strategy." I love that. So
Oh,
you
that
want to
headline.
talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, the headline. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how did you come up with that one? Was it just through your experience, coaching school leaders?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, coaching school leaders and ruckus makers. And I think I've heard people say that a lot of times, that hope's not a strategy, you know. Uh, One of the ways that I like to talk too is saying ideas are great, but not the greatest, right? So what's greater than an idea? Well, it's taking action.
Mm,
At the end of the day, you know, I'm really focused on helping school leaders take action because action creates results, right?
yeah.
And so that's the thing. You know, we were talking about the void before and how stuff will fill that. And if we don't have an intentional plan, we have all these good feelings about the startup, and it's exciting to start a school year, but we don't have that intentional plan, you know, we're gonna have some trouble. And like you said, it's very predictable, the kind of trouble and stress and whatever we'll experience. So I worked with a principal out in Arkansas in the United States. His name was John.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to him about like what working through the challenge and implementing what I taught during the challenge, which is now all in the book. And I said, yeah, what was that? What was that like for you? And he said, prior to the template in your training, Danny, I was like every other principal with a ton of things on his mind.
Yeah.
And, I wake up in the middle of the night. What do I need to be doing? And all this kind of stuff. And he said, once you taught me the process and I worked through and completed the template, not only was it easy, right, to complete, it was easy to implement. And what he said is, I can honestly say all the stress was gone, right?
Mm,
So imagine that. Not only are you able to substitute hope with an actual implementable practical plan, it's going to create results. You're going to feel better, right? And feel less stressed about starting off that school year as well. So that's why I have that in there. It's all about taking action, right? At the end of the day, that's all that matters.
And it does make a difference. It's not going to be night and day. You got to
Yeah,
stick to it. You got to stick to the plan. And
true,
I
true.
promise you, everybody that's listening, that's working, school leaders or leaders, ruckus makers that are working until, 8, 9 o'clock at night every night, working Saturdays, working Sundays, there is a way that we can do things and tools to put into place and systems to put into place, like building leadership momentum, the stuff that Danny's putting out in this book here, that can actually help us to not be working all the time,
Yeah,
weeknights and weekend. It is
right.
possible. And I've always said, Danny, when I'm coaching, if I was able to do it, then anybody can do it,
Sure.
and at the time when I implemented it and I was, following the stuff, like you're the one that introduced me to time blocking, that's when I
Mm,
first, and that totally changed my perspective. It totally
hmm.
changed my productivity level, and I've been teaching it ever since, because it's just
Huh.
been it's been life changing, not just at work, but in terms
Yeah, yeah.
of wanting to write a book, in terms of having a business, a consulting business,
Mm-hmm.
just overall planning. It's been a huge success, but it but not overnight. I fell off the proverbial horse a few times, had to get back on. So
Sure.
that's the part that's important, right? So it's
Yeah,
not
no one's
always going to be
perfect.
roses. Nobody's perfect, but in the long run, the gains are just unbelievable. And it's like what
Mm,
John said, after having learned that, then a lot of that stress is gone now, because
gone.
I'm more aware of certain things. I'm more mindful of other things. I've got systems that are in place. I've got this plan that's not 125 pages long. I know
Yeah.
exactly where I'm going, which is comforting, just knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just stick to the plan, and you're going to get the results, and you're going to feel better. You're going to be less stressed. If other principals, leaders, ruckus makers were able to do it in with a similar profile as yours, in terms of
Yeah.
school, your workplace, your family, then you can do it as well. So if you're listening to this,
100%.
you gotta pre-order this book. You gotta put these things into place, and it's just gonna make it'll make a big difference in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Hey, well, it's true, right? And that's the message that I try to give, and in every moment that I do have with people that I coach, because
Yeah.
I'm living proof that it works. And if I'm able to do it, you know, being a principal, I'm a system principal now. I'm a district
Mm-hmm.
leader now, but it's
Right.
been 2 years. I've only been out of the schools for 2 years, and I've had schools. They're not big, but still, 300 students, no VPs,
Mm-hmm.
and with everything that comes with that. And if I was able to do it and get to a point where it didn't happen very often, I had to work at night or weekends, and I show up with a smile. Sure,
Mm.
some days were harder, and some
Right.
days I was in a bad mood, but most days they weren't.
Yeah,
And if I was able to put that into place, that's the message that I give them. I know that you can do it as well, and it's
for
just a
sure.
matter of having a cheerleader beside you, and looking at different possibilities for you, and tailoring it to the person that you are. And let's get that going, and you will get results if you stick to it.
Right. Right. Yeah. I never promise leaders that being a school leader that'll be easy. But I do say it could be easier. And
Easier.
I
I like it.
fully stand behind that. And it helps to have the plan, but it is up to you, to implement. And John, he said, not once I had it, like talking with the team, talking with the staff, the community, just like, here's what we're getting done. You know what I mean? And it just was so fluid and so energizing. Um, yeah, just really, really cool. I'm super happy to have this out there these days. So yeah, it'll
Absolutely.
never be easy, just easier.
It's not going to be easy. It'll be easier. And here's the last thing I'll say about it, Danny, is the nice thing about having, a resource like building leadership momentum, is that I can put it into place as a leader, but then it can transcend it can transcend me and what I do, and I can bring it down to the teachers, to the students, and get them to implement some stuff within,
Absolutely.
and then before you know it, you've got it going on within the culture of your school, and it's starting to build into the
Right.
culture. So if it's making stuff a little easier, and more bearable, or it's allowing me to smile and be more aware and enjoy my job a little bit more, well, can you imagine what it can do for your colleagues? Can you imagine what it can do for, if you're a building leader, what it can do for the teachers, what it can do for the
Totally.
students? You know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
impact is just unbelievable, that it can have throughout that school culture.
And here's the thing, Joel, like, so it's the principal entry plan. It's the first 90 days,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to reveal the punchline, like, still get the book. But one of the big ideas that I want everyone to understand. So this type of planning and get you the momentum and the energy for the first 90 days, guess what? You can repeat the process.
Yeah.
So it's already mind-boggling that many principals don't have that focused plan at the start of a school year, but then take a percentage that have the plan. How many of them actually have drafted out the next 90 days? And then you could do it 4 times
Absolutely.
each year, right? It's
Yeah.
4 quarterly plans.
Yeah.
And imagine how smoothly and how, just like, I'm thinking a well-oiled, systems level machine, just having that mapped out. And as you mentioned in the earlier part of the show, it doesn't have to be 150 pages long,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's the 5 buckets. There's the way I think about timing that I discuss in the book. And it really is it's a high level view, but man, does it give you direction. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
a gift to you and a gift to your team,
Well, thank you very much, Danny. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Last thing I'd like to touch on or mention,
Okay.
to our listeners is, you do got some bonuses going on right now, right? If you pre-order the book.
Yeah, there's 5 of them. One of them is going to be getting that fillable template. So
Yep.
the book talks about it, but you'll be able to download once the book is ready. So just to be clear, it's pre-order right now.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's all through production, there'll be a fillable template that my design team is working on, just a beautiful PDF and something you could print off or keep digital, but there's your plan, right? So now all the ideas from the book are condensed, very practical and clear in that template. Number 2, time and date to be determined, but I'm going to do a group coaching call. So it's not going to be,
Nice.
I don't think, like a 5-day, the the challenge that I had, but
Mm-hmm.
Assuming everybody gets the book, it's an easy read. You'll be able to read it in 90 minutes. So um, I wrote an email recently saying, like, once you master sort of a medium, then you could start breaking the rules, right? That's what they
Yeah.
tell people. So the second book was Mastermind. That became a bestseller. So I do consider that I've mastered that medium. So how am I trying to reinvent or do things a different way with this book? My promise is I'm going to show you how to make an awesome entry plan, a perfect entry plan, in as few words as possible. That's my promise.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, you'll be able to read it quickly and then have this group coaching call where, if you're stuck at all, right, or you have some more questions, want to go deeper, or just be in a space where you're learning from others. That's
That's right.
really exciting. We'll do that as a bonus too. And again, this is all free. Like, once you get the book, I have something called a Powerful Days course. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but since that first part of your principal entry plan is all about you and how to sustain your energy, be your best consistently, that Powerful Days course will just supplement that. And it's something I sell on my website for, I don't know, it's 100 or $200. I don't even remember, but basically people could get that for free as a bonus. There's a delegation masterclass, which is also going on right now. And I did have one last bonus, which was an individual coaching call, but those are all
They're all
taken.
gone.
Those are all gone. Yeah, sorry.
Well, those are great bonuses, Danny. And
Yeah.
again, for our listeners, if you're looking, I highly recommend it. I use these types of plans, and they work. So you got to get out there and pre-order the book. It's over at betterleadersbetterschools.com. But in the show notes, I will, like I said previously, I will add the links. I'll add the links to your two other books as well, Danny, if people would like to get a hold of those.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks.
so guys, just head on over to inspireleadership.ca. In the podcast section, there'll be a page there for Danny.
Awesome.
And I want this out really, really soon, Danny. So, I think I'm going to publish this podcast episode today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. How
So
about that?
as soon as we're done, I'm going to
Sweet.
edit everything,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'll get it out on YouTube as well, and I'll get the page up on my website because I've got a little bit of time this afternoon, and I think it's that important. And
Thank you.
the timing is great, right? We're March here in Ontario, Canada.
Yeah.
We're actually in our spring break. It's March break as we see it here.
Okay.
So it's our week off. So this is when we're already in the school boards, we're already talking about next year. We're already talking about budgets for next year, planning for next year. So the timing is perfect. I want to get this out to the leaders that are out there. So yeah, so I'm going to publish this today, Danny, and I'll tag you in all the social medias as usual. So
Thank
let's
you.
get
Thank
this
you.
out. And once
Yeah.
again, thanks for taking the time to being on the podcast again. It's always a pleasure to be talking with you. Congratulations on your new book, Building Leadership Momentum. I love that title, Building Leadership Momentum. It's just powerful. I love it. And I can't wait to get my hands on it as well and read it. So again, thank you, Danny, and congratulations.
Thanks for having me on the show, Joel, and thanks for being such a great support. And anytime I could be of service to you, certainly want to promote your book when it's ready on my podcast.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Danny.